Okay, welcome. Thanks so much for being here today for our webinar on finding compelling research impact stories with IRIS. My name is Dharma Ackman. I'm the Managing Director of IRIS. And today, along with my colleague, Kevin Bjorn, the Technical Director of IRIS, we'll be showing you how you can use IRIS's Impact Finder tool to find real-world stories that will communicate the impact of your university's research activity, connecting it to the geographic regions and areas that might not be foremost in folks' minds when they think about research. The Impact Finder was just updated with the most recent data from university members, which means that most of IRIS's members will now be able to see information through fiscal year 2023. So, brief overview of what you can expect in today's webinar. We're going to start with an overview of what IRIS is, talk about the kind of use case and the users that inspired our creation of the Impact Finder. We'll provide a demonstration of the tool, show how it's been used as a communications and a public relations device. We'll finish things off briefly with how you can become a member of IRIS if you're not already, and then we'll open it up for questions. So I would invite you to enter your questions at any time using the Q&A feature in Zoom, which we will be monitoring. We'll mostly save the questions until the end unless something comes up that looks like it's in need of immediate clarification. If you experience any technical difficulties, please use the chat function, which we'll also be monitoring. We are recording today's webinar and we'll be sharing it widely. So if you have to drop off early for any reason, or you'd like to share it with colleagues later, it will be available. And with that, let's get started. Oops. Okay, so for those of you that may not already be members of IRIS or who could just use a refresher on who we are and what we provide, fundamentally, IRIS is about demonstrating the value of research and empowering universities to demonstrate and communicate the value of their research to a variety of internal stakeholders, elected officials, and the public. So most often when universities talk about research impact, it's in terms of things like research rankings, scholarly and research success, and how research pushes the frontiers of knowledge, which are, of course, all very important to the mission of universities. But the research dollars that flow into universities also drive economic impact, and they often serve as catalysts for economic growth. For example, Michigan's 3 research-intensive universities spent $3.13 billion in federal and non-federal research funding, with 10,716 vendors and subcontractors across the U.S. between 2017 and 2021. About $51.3 million was spent with 1,200 some odd small businesses. This is a story that's too often lost in discussions about research funding, and the value of universities, especially to their regions. And this is where IRIS comes in. So to talk more about that, I'm going to turn things over to Kevin.
Thanks, Dharma. So I'm going to give you some quick background history on IRIS, where we came from, and what our sort of expand on what Dharma has talked about regarding our purpose. So IRIS was formed back in 2015, all those many, many years ago, by universities to try to solve a problem for universities. The problem was being able to identify and talk about the impact of research, as Dharma said, beyond the more traditional scope of measuring impact. And one of the areas that they wanted to focus on was to talk about the economic impact, particularly to geographic areas, away from the actual university in which the funding originates. So if you can imagine, money flows into a university, it gets spent, of course, in that immediate local area, but it also gets spent in counties, in states, and across the country in a variety of different ways. So the universities got together and created IRIS. It's housed at the University of Michigan. It's an IRB-approved data repository. And what we do is we take administrative data from our members and combine that with a variety of other data sources and derive impact measurements that we then give back to our members as reports. And we also provide data to researchers, both faculty, scientific researchers, as well as institutional researchers. IRIS is a member-driven organization, and as you can see in the slide there, we currently have 30 members, and these represent universities across the country, from East Coast to West Coast, privates, publics, big and small, and they all have a voice in the governance of IRIS and in the decisions that we make in terms of the types of products and reports that we put together. We have a board of directors that's derived from these member universities that meet regularly to make decisions about the future of IRIS, the direction that things should go. So it's always something that we encourage our members to participate in, so their voice can be heard. In addition, we take this data and we have a variety of different partners that we work with to improve that data. We improve the data by combining it with data sources, both public and private, some of which are the US Census Bureau, and through them, the IRS. Some of them are private sector, like Moody's, the rating agency, as well as Stepping Blocks, a smaller company out of Atlanta, Georgia, that provides information on people and their outcomes here in the United States. We take all of that data, as well as a variety of other sources that we pull in, and improve the data that's given to us. And then that improved data is what feeds into our reports. And it also feeds into something that we call the research data release, which is a mechanism or a data set that's available to researchers that allow them to explore and answer scientific questions that they may have, but it's also available to our member institutional researchers who want to address questions that are relevant to the university, such as benchmarking themselves in a variety of different ways against peer groups, or trying to understand impacts of certain subsets of businesses or the outcomes of specific people. There's a wide range of use cases that are available to them to do all of that. So in addition to all of that, we also provide a bunch of other things: communication press releases, customer support. So if you have specific challenges or problems you want to answer, you can direct them to us, and we will actually help you develop the code or the reports or things like that that you need to answer those questions. Dharma, if you want to go to the next slide. And so we provide all of this as members of IRIS. And so, Dharma, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so Kevin talked a bit about who we are, what we do, and how we do what we do. One of the specific reports that IRIS creates to show the impact of research investments is the Impact Finder. The creation of this tool was inspired by our members' needs, and specifically people working in our own university-sponsored research office, looking to do communications and outreach aimed at the state legislature and public on the west side of the state. That's quite a distance from Southeast Michigan, where University of Michigan is. And they were looking for stories of research impact that would connect the research that's being carried out at University of Michigan with some of the economic impacts to the region. Because of the detailed information that we have in the IRIS dataset, this is something that IRIS staff could assist in finding by querying against rows and rows of data in the dataset. But we built the Impact Finder to provide a more accessible and user-friendly way for people who don't have the time, knowledge, or the inclination to write database queries to explore the vendor data by region, funding source, time span, and topic areas so that they can drill down to detailed information about payment transactions. This is a map-based tool that takes the data from your university's Office of Sponsored Projects and then links it to external data sources to provide an accessible way for communications, public relations, and government relations people to look through the vendor transaction data to find stories that illustrate the economic and scientific impacts of university-based research projects. So let's dive into a demo so that you can see for yourself. I'm going to switch screens. Okay, so just a quick note. I'm going to be showing you University of Michigan's data with their permission. We have a special agreement with them that allows us to do that for demonstration purposes. Your university's data are only available to people at your institution, and they're not shared with anyone else. So as we look at this, I also want you to keep in mind that this is only payments that are from sponsored research grants from federal funding agencies and other sources. So the spending data that we present is not all of the spending from your university. So the first thing that we see as we land on the Impact Finder is this map of the US, and it visually indicates whether there was spending with vendors or subawardees in a particular state for the most recent fiscal year for which we have data. And in this case, that's fiscal year 2023. As you can see, University of Michigan spent money in all of the US states because none are marked with this gray color. Now, of course, most universities are most interested in the spending that they have with vendors in their home state. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the state of Michigan. And on this page, we see a map of the state. Very sad that the Upper Peninsula is barely included, and I'm going to have to talk to Kevin and his team about that. But it is there. And we see a map of the state with counts of vendors and subawardees on their corresponding geographic regions of Michigan. So when you hover over these, you see more detail. So for example, if I hover over, say, this vendor pin, I see a total of $47,000 and change spent at Northern Lakes Community Mental Health. If I hover over this 40 dot in the middle, I see total amount made to 40 vendors and subawardees in this region of the state. And then you can click on the circles to drill down to ever finer detail in the vendor counts until you get a display of individual vendors. So I'll go ahead and click on one of these vendors. When you click on an individual vendor, you see detailed information about the transactions and the amounts. And then you can click through to get information on the research award that it was associated with. And we pull as much information as possible into these. So particularly with NSF awards, you'll see abstract detail, but really this is about what we're able to match the data with. So you can pull this one up and see the payment as well as the title of the award. So that just allows you a finer level of detail. Unfortunately, none of these have abstracts, although that is a filter that you can also use. So this map-based browse is very much an exploratory avenue into the vendor data, where you can view the map and get a visual sense of where the spending is happening. So, for example, you can see here that U of M's research-related spending in fiscal year 2023 included, not only 580 different places that are sort of in our region of the state, but also with vendors all around the state, including in many rural areas. But the Impact Finder also allows you to narrow in on what you're interested in. So using these fields at the top of the page, you can select a time frame. So we can go back as far as the data goes back, in this case, 2019. And you can also filter on specific counties. So it pulls up a county list if you go here, specific funding agencies. You can pick federal and other. You can also select contract types, so we distinguish between vendor and subawards, and you can also choose to only pull up those things that have abstract data associated with them. You can also use the search bar if you're interested in a potential topic of research, such as, I don't know, let's say electric vehicles, a topic that's particularly relevant to the state of Michigan. But if you also know the name of the award or primary investigator, you could do a search based on that. So now that I've walked you through the key features of the Impact Finder, I kind of wanted to set up a scenario based on the kind of use case presented by an Office of University Federal Government Relations. And this is the kind of scenario that we hear about quite a bit. So in this scenario, I work for the Federal Relations Department at the University of Michigan, and I've got an upcoming introductory meeting with a US representative from the west side of the state, which is Michigan's 2nd Congressional District. Now, I already know from other IRIS reports, specifically our Congressional District Detail Report, that since 2019, U of M's research projects have purchased goods and services worth almost $1.5 million in this congressional district across 67 different businesses. And that's a pretty good story on its own about how U of M's research dollars have supported a web of businesses in this congressperson's district. But I want to highlight some of the specific businesses that provide the goods and services that are needed for U of M's research to really connect U of M's research activities with his region, economy, and constituents. So I'm going to go ahead and go to a new page that I've already preloaded. And here what I've basically done is selected many of the counties that make up this congressperson's area. I've also selected the date range between 2019 and 2023, just so I can get a full list of the individual vendors and subcontractors. So as you look at the side, you see a list of vendors with payments from University of Michigan research projects, and these are ordered by the total amount of payments. So for example, you see a payment at the top to Grand Valley University. You see some charges to this occupational research and assessment, which I'm kind of interested in. So if you open this up, you see that we have 7 payments across a variety of research projects. And as I was saying before, you can click on each of these to get more detail about the kinds of research that are being supported by this company. So we open this up, we see that it's funded from the CDC. We get somewhat of a sense of what this is about because it's for the University of Michigan Injury Prevention Center. And then this gives the abstract that talks a little bit more about what this research is all about. Now, this is a center at the University of Michigan that's based around injury prevention. And as I look at these, I see that a lot of these seem to be about either injury prevention or opioid overdose. I think almost all of them. Yeah, and a good deal of it is funded by the CDC. Now, this is important detail to kind of draw a connection between this person's region and the research that's going on. But this is also an area where a bit of Googling is kind of required to find out more about the profile of this company, where IRIS is showing that goods and services are being provided for University of Michigan research. So I did a little bit of digging on this company, and it appears that they're like an assessment organization that creates some standardized assessment tools for organizations to use. So now doing that, basically, in addition to being able to provide information to this congressperson on the amount that University of Michigan research projects have spent in his district and the total amount that has been spent, I'm also able to create business highlights that describe particular vendors and how they're connected and supported by the university's research enterprise. I'm going to return to my slides now because I'm going to actually show you how this has been done. So here we basically have an example of this. The university communications office basically created this handout that highlights the economic and social impact of University of Michigan research on Senate District 16. And it highlights a number of things here. It highlights a youth employment program, a nonprofit social services organization, as well as a manufacturing company that supplies protective equipment to almost 30 different University of Michigan research labs. And so you can imagine handing this to your congressperson or creating this to leverage it for different public communications. And that's exactly what we have seen done. So I'm going to go to a little video presentation. The communications office produced a video piece highlighting the numerous businesses around the state that received payments from University of Michigan's research enterprise. And I'm going to show you this. It's just a brief video to kind of capture what can be done with this kind of tool and these kind of data.
Research at the University of Michigan pumped nearly $100 million into Michigan's economy during the past fiscal year. A recent report from the Institute for Research on Innovation and Science, or IRIS, found that Michigan-based vendors, including both large and small businesses statewide, received a combined $97 million in exchange for supplying the goods and services required to support U of M's research and scholarship activities. Michigan-based companies have received more than $517 million since 2017 to supply goods and services in support of U of M research projects. This includes everything from beakers and laboratory supplies to specially designed pediatric treadmills used by kinesiology researchers to improve the walking habits of children born with Down syndrome.
Research, led by teams across our 3 campuses, continues to spur tremendous advancements that positively impact society. And as part of this important activity, we all play an essential role in accelerating economic growth and strengthening our workforce.
Companies based in Wayne County received more than $35 million through contracts with U of M researchers since 2017. One of those companies, a Detroit-based welding supply corporation, received $2.3 million over a 3-year span to support a wide variety of U of M projects, ranging from microelectronics and healthcare to sustainability. In Muskegon County, a construction company specializing in docks and related materials worked with U of M on fish habitat restoration in the St. Clair River, led by the Michigan Sea Grant. The company received a $1 million contract to build artificial spawning reef units along the river, aiding in the recovery of its local lake sturgeon population. A small woman-owned business based in Burton, Michigan, has received more than $500,000 in research-related contracts since 2017 for its work in supplying teams across U of M with general laboratory supplies and equipment found in most research spaces across the 3 campuses.
The University of Michigan conducts $1.6 billion or so dollars of research. Most of that money comes from the federal government or other external funders. It's money that comes to Michigan because the university's here, and the university uses it to hire people who do the research work and to buy the things that you need for research. So the immediate way is by supporting businesses and other organizations in the region who provide goods and services that the university needs to get its research done. The university also educates people, many of them through work on research projects, and they stay, some of them, in the state and contribute to the workforce. And in the long term, the university is a source of new knowledge, new technologies, startup firms, and in extreme cases, entire new industries emerge from university research. So you have to think on 3 different timescales.
IRIS is a national consortium of research universities based in the Institute for Social Research, housed at the University of Michigan, and organized around an institutional review board approved data repository.
Right, so I hope this has given you a sense of how you can use the Impact Finder to generate leads for stories about the flow of research dollars from your university to businesses in a particular region. I also do want to highlight that we're always happy to hear your feedback about these tools, as well as to provide additional support. If there's something that you're trying to find and you're unable to do it on your own using any of our tools, you can just reach out to Kevin or me and we'll be glad to help you. And if all this sounds interesting and you're not yet members, we'd love to talk to you about joining. So Kevin mentioned before, members get access to the Impact Finder, but also a suite of institution-specific reports that highlight different aspects of research impact. Those are listed here. We're always trying to develop new ones based on what we learn from members. We also create aggregate reports to demonstrate collective impact. So if you're a member, you get an aggregate report of all IRIS universities. We're also creating different aggregates. So for example, we recently released a series of aggregate reports that encompass the 3 largest research institutions in Michigan, MSU, U of M, and Wayne State, to tell a bigger story about the collective impact of these research universities on the state's economy. In addition, I think Kevin mentioned this, but I'll just say it again. Researchers at member institutions also get free access to the UMetrics dataset through a virtual data enclave. And this is a de-identified collective data from all of the IRIS member institutions. These data have been used by scholars in over 100 publications across fields like economics, higher education, and science policy. And we are about to have an updated release of this data set in just a couple of weeks, and we will also host a webinar with that release as well. So with that, I think I'm going to stop screen sharing and turn it over to your questions if you have any. It looks like Kevin has been answering them.
Couple of them.
Awesome. And I think everyone sees those responses. I guess just in case, I'll read them. So someone asked, would it be possible to use this impact finder to identify amounts of grant dollars paid to publishers for author article processing charges? Kevin answered that yes, we focus on geographic impact, so you need to know the names of the specific publishers or their locations. And that might be easier to do with our research data set that I just mentioned. Will we share the slides in the recording? Absolutely. And I'm going to just give it a few more beats to see if anybody has additional questions. Okay, here we go. My university is an IRIS member, but I wasn't familiar with it until my supervisor recommended this webinar. How can I get login to access the member tools? You can reach out to the person at your university, or we're happy to help you. So you can just email me and I can provide my email here, and I will be happy to help you. One other thing while we're waiting to see if anyone has questions that I forgot to mention, for people who are members, we are gearing up for summer release of updated reports. So we have an updated suite of government relations related reports, including spending report, state handout that breaks things down by legislative district and is meant to be a very easy item that you can hand to your legislators. And so that is all coming soon, as long as your institution's data are up to date. And I'm not seeing any additional questions, but certainly if things pop up, you can email any of us. Our contact information is on the IRIS website. And I put my email in the chat. Kevin did too. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the future. And thanks so much for joining us today.